All right, getting back into the restoration part of the apocalypse equation instead of some French cleats and other stuff and shop stuff I've been doing. What I have here is a 1950s, my best guess, probably mid-50s, Craftsman table saw. Generally these were 8 1/4 inch saws. I've seen guys put 9-inch blades on them. This one, the prefix starts with 103. It's 103 22161. I believe. Hey, if you find yourself enjoying this kind of content and want to see more, why don't you mash down on that subscribe button? That helps us immeasurably. And then maybe punch the like button and give us a thumbs up and maybe comment and stuff. That helps us bring you more content like this. And now, due in part to the overly litigious society in which we reside, listen to my robot.
Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson! Danger!
This one is a complete hodgepodge, okay? It's got a blade in here. I think it's just a, like a circular saw blade. I know that these have 1/2 inch arbors, not the 5/8, so the blade kind of matters. It has a cast aluminum table extension this side and the sheet metal one on this side. So it's a hodgepodge of everything. Did come with the miter gauge, did come with the fence. Obviously the fence on these models isn't great, but usable. Just be a little careful when you're setting it up to make your cuts. This one has no motor, no base, no motor mount, no belt, and you know, that's it. There's not a whole lot to this one. I did get it for the low price of free though. I'm sure I have a motor laying around that will work with this one, a belt laying around will work with this one, and a base laying around that will work with this one. And I'll fab up, you know, some kind of motor mount that will work. Seems to be in very good shape. I mean, this probably spent some time in somebody's garage, probably decades in somebody's garage who used it maybe at most on the weekend. It's got the accessories, got the miter gauge, got the insert for the saw blade. I can tell by pulling on this saw blade and stuff and spinning it, I think the bearings are in excellent condition, but that remains to be seen. All right, so with that said, let's dig into this thing. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to start with pulling off stuff that we can pull off. Let's try to get this. Oh, these just snapped in, I believe. Yep, they just snap in, and there's some 60-year-old sawdust there. And again, the lock works on the miter gauge, but that's something that is kind of one of the weak points of this saw. But it appears to be all here, and it's got some bubblegum type stuff down here. I don't know what that is. And we'll take off the saw blade here. I'm going to do that with an adjustable wrench. And we'll use the old... Alright, let's see what we got here. Remember what I said, 1/2 inch arbor. They didn't standardize a 5/8 inch arbor until later, so that is what it is. And also, this is a standard, you know, thread. So we'll take off this nut. Take off the ridiculously small vibration. And also, I noticed that it did not have one on the other side. So we're going to need to take care of that before we run this thing. I have those lying around too. All right, so let's take off the table to begin with. Let's flip this guy over. There we go. And there are 4 bolts that hold this sheet metal body to the table. Since there's no motor on it right now, I don't have to, you know, deal with any of that stuff. So, let us try to get that stuff off here. What do you think? Half inch? Maybe, no, half inch. I should put a wobbly on this. Okay. There's just 4 bolts that screw right into what I'm sure on the cast iron table is going to be threaded. There's not nuts on the other side, they're just threads. So, let's try to get these guys off. There's one. Okay, they're even coarse threaded fasteners, so they're not the fine threads like you'd find on the cabinet saws. Let's try to get this guy off. There's a nut in my way there, a screw in my way there. Gonna have to get him with a wrench. Fingers. You know, every suburban dad had one of these in his garage in the 50s and 60s. They're not really, you know, cabinet grade saws, and maybe they're not as rough and tumble as some of the newer ones, but they did their job. And you can generally, at least up here in the upper Midwest, you can generally pick these up for 20 bucks. This one didn't have a motor or anything, so it was free, and I took advantage of that. But let's see. There's some sheet metal screws that hold the fascia onto this thing coming through the side here. I can't get a socket on it. These 2 back ones because the sheet metal screws are sticking through. Okay, this guy should come right off now. Pull off this handle here. That is held on with a set screw. All right, and there is the sheet metal body. It of course has some paint on it, like every one that I have ever seen. We'll see what we can do about that. I would like to kind of keep the original paint on this one because it's in such good shape. It's not rusted, it's not anything. It's got some paint on the side here that I'll try to get off with, I think, some brake clean first. I have noticed that saws of this vintage, the paint is susceptible to brake clean, so be a little careful. Use it sparingly if you have to. But everything's in good shape. The diamond pattern on here looks good. Little sawdusty. That's about it with this and this paint. So let's set this over here. All right, bringing in a little closer here. There's 4 of these pads that sheet metal body screwed to. I just wanted to show you those. There's nothing special about them. Here is that 1/2 inch arbor. And I'm feeling the bearings, and those bearings are really good. There's no movement, they're not shaky, it spins very smoothly, it doesn't feel like you're dragging it through gravel, whatever. So now we'll pull off these 4 and we'll get this main trunnion body off. Those are probably 1/2 inch also, let's see. 1/2 inch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Something of note on these is there's no washer on those, but they do have this kind of knurled head to the bolt, so that's what causes that or keeps it from backing out ever. So there is the main working unit right there. That's the trunnion. What we'll do is we'll clean up some of this sawdust and stuff, and we'll take a look at this trunnion in a little more detail. All right, the main trunnion housing here looks pretty caked with, I don't know, 50-year-old sawdust. It's a little stiff. There's sawdust in the gears here. All sorts of stuff. The main thing that I'm concerned about here are these bearings, and these bearings seem to be in very good condition. So I think what I'm going to do, honestly, is just kind of lubricate, wire wheel some stuff, and put it back together. I'm going to clean it, of course. So let's get to that. Let's start by pulling this guy off. These are standard screws with lock washers on them. I hope they don't give me too much trouble. This is all cast zinc or aluminum or pot metal or whatever you want to call it. White metal, I've heard it called that before too. It is not cast iron in this saw, which is, you know, they obviously were making a price point here and they weren't making an industrial saw, so. All right, there's the track. I'm gonna lube the hell out of that. And these guys here too, you can see it's full of sawdust. Okay. All right, what's next? Ooh, this guy, but he seems like he's not gonna wanna come out. Probably need some juice for that guy. Matter of fact, I probably need some juice for all of these. Little juice never hurt. Let's try to hit all the fasteners here. Let's try this guy here. The biggest screwdriver I own. Oh yeah, there we go. One. Okay. And we have a C-clip here that retains that. Thankfully I have some C-clip wrenches or pliers, whatever you want to call them. Let's see if we can get in there. Those are pretty small. Winner chicken dinner. It's first time. Including that time, that's the first time it's happened in my life. Washers and what they call a Bellevue washer here, which is a spring washer. It keeps tension on it. Okay, looks like we're going to have to get this guy off. Those look like 7/16. And they are. Springs on those guys again too, just to keep the tension on there. Little plate, and then this ball that was full of junk. Let's take a look at this guy here too. Okay. There's another clip right here. Okay, I want to show you right down in here, there's a set screw that retains this main assembly here, and they were nice enough to drill a hole in here so that I could reach that with a hex key. There we go. All right, just gonna loosen up. I'm gonna leave that in the hole, otherwise I'll lose it. This should come right out. There we go. We look here, that obviously needs cleaning, and all of this stuff needs cleaning and lubrication. Okay, let's see, how about this guy? When we turn this guy, this on these models, it's one wheel that turns both. You push it in to get the elevation, you pull it out to get the angle. So all of this is going to get cleaned and lubed. I think right now what I'm going to do is take all of these pieces over to the wire wheel and kind of wire wheel them. Before I do that, just on camera, I'm just going to hit it with a big blast of compressed air. My compressed air in the shop is 175 pounds at full, so nothing to trifle with. And I think I'm going to take all of this off also here, just to get after it. Let's see what we got here. 9/16 I'm guessing. Yep, 9/16. Let's get after him. This is just the spring-loaded tensioner for the angle. Okay. You got a little shim in there. That was wrong. I'm gonna put that on a wobbly. I could probably get it in there then, right? There we go. That guy was actually pretty tight. Okay, all of this comes off. Now I can get this off. Oh yeah, that's, look at all the crud in there. We're gonna have to lube that up after we wire wheel this guy a little bit. And I think what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take off these 3 screws and just take this off as a complete assembly. I think that would be easiest. Okay, so. Boy, they don't want that guy going anywhere. 3 screws on him. With lock washers. 1. Pretty tight. 2. Last one here. Let's go. 3. Remind me that the shiny one goes on the bottom when I'm putting this back together. All right, there we go. Also remind me not to lose this bearing here, okay? That bearing for the detent goes underneath here, I believe. Let's take a look at that. Yep. Okay. This is very soft and it doesn't require any wire wheeling. I am going to take this guy off here too, though. That looks like another different size, right? 7/16 on those. You had no problem using different size fasteners on all this stuff. And no spring on that one either. There's 2. And the reason I took those guys off is because this guy here I wanted to get off. Seems to be having some issues. There we go. And I wanted to make sure that I cleaned him and lubed him really good. All right, so now the thing is completely disassembled. We will go to the wire wheel and wire wheel what we need to wire wheel, which is basically everything. And then we'll get her back together. Let's go over there. All right, this is my wire wheel. These are my gloves. This is my heavy canvas apron. This is my full face shield. All right, so I got all the pieces cleaned and stuff, and you know, a lot of times I'll use grease, literal grease, in these tracks and on these gears. But some guys in their comments, you know, swore at me. Okay, they didn't swear at me. They very respectfully questioned my choice of lubricants. In general, the manuals say 20 or 30 weight oil, but I have some dry moly lubricant that I'm going to spray on this one just to see how it works. So it's basically like spray paint, okay? You spray it in there. That's what it looks like. You let it dry. I have these all cleaned up to within an inch of their life, by the way, at least the track part of it. And I'll hit this stuff too. This stuff stinks, boy. Okay, these tracks all look pretty good. They did require a little cleaning, but nothing too bad. This whole saw is in excellent shape. So I'm going to dry film lube this, both sides, and dry film lube this, both sides. I am going to use some grease on other parts of this, however. This little ball socket guy here, I'm going to use some grease in him. And that newly wire wheeled cover, I'll put some in there. And I'll also put some on this ball here too, just to make sure that everything is lubed up as it should be. And then we're ready to put this thing back together. I'm going to 30 weight oil it after I get it all together on the threads and that kind of stuff. So we'll see when that happens. Okay, so putting it back together is the same as taking it apart. It's pretty easy. There's not a whole lot going on there that you need to be concerned with. Just remember where your stuff goes, I guess, is all I have to say. So, for this, I did want to bring you in here and show you some of this stuff though, okay? And here's what I wanted to show you. How all this stuff works. All right, so a couple of things. There's some like adjustments you can make here. This big guy up here, right? See this big spring here? The tighter you get this, the harder it will be to turn this to change the angle, okay? And with these guys here, there's two springs underneath here. The harder that you tighten these guys down, the more spring pressure it puts on there, and the harder it becomes to turn this, the elevation, okay? You want some tension on there because you don't want the vibration of the saw to change your settings, right? So you want some tension on there. Here's how this part right in here works, and this is a little complex, so I'll try to get with you. Okay, so there's a tooth gear here, and when this tooth gear spins, it changes the angle. But as you can see, when I'm spinning this, I'm spinning the handle here, this tooth gear isn't spinning. So it's not doing anything. So you have to put some pressure on the out here, pulling this lever out so that this pin engages the cutout in the gear and then it changes the angle, okay? Now, if you can see right here, all right, there is a square, it looks like a socket almost, a square on the end of this shaft that goes into a cutout square on the end of this shaft. When you push this, okay, it disengages this pin, and as you'll see in a second here, that square shaft will slide into the square socket and it will engage the elevation, okay? So how do you make it harder to turn the elevation? You tighten down these 1/2-inch screws, these 1/2-inch bolts here. There's a spring under each one, and it pushes this, which we have lubed extensively, harder onto that ball that we polished, and it makes it harder to turn. I can feel it harder to turn. Okay, so you want to put some tension on there so that the vibration of the saw does not change your elevation setting. And we have everything in here lubed up, dry lubed, and everything else, so it spins really easy now. Okay, so that's for elevation. Well, what about angle? We don't want our angle to change either. Okay, and I'm going to pull this out, and you see that this pin is going to engage this, and I'm going to change my elevation. Well, this one here, you can see this big spring here, pushes down, and the tighter you get this, the more it compresses that spring, the more it pushes against this trunnion, and the harder it becomes to adjust your angle. So I like mine a little harder than that. All right. That's pretty solid right there. Okay, so those are your two adjustments. These two spring-loaded, there's actually 3 bolts with 2 adjustments. The spring-loaded things that will change how much tension is on both your elevation here and your angle here. Kind of a clever design. Okay, so here's the underside of that table, and it's got 50-year-old sawdust, and some of this stuff is pretty crunchy there. I'm going to blow it off with some compressed air, and then we'll see what it looks like. I might have to get after it with drill and a wire brush. We'll see. Yeah, a little bit of wire brush is going to be in order here, I think. Okay, this seems pretty soft. It's not all that hard on there, so I'm just going to use a regular crimped wheel brush, not a braided one. You get the idea, just a couple minutes of that, maybe 10 minutes of that, and this will all be clean. And because I'm wire wheeling it, and it is, even with the crimped, not the braided, it is cutting it down to the bare metal, I will have to repaint that, so I will repaint that also. Okay, now on this side, I'm going to do my patented, it's not patented, you feel free to use it, refresh, which is, oh, he's got some Bondo in here, which is just an orbital sander starting at about 80 grit and then bringing her down to maybe 220, and that's all I do for the top. I will bring in for some of that. I'm going to remove these 2 sides first, just so that, you know, I don't abrade them with the wheel. They're looking pretty good shape. I might just hit the top of this aluminum one. We'll see, but it's very standard stuff. If you've seen the channel before, you've seen me do it numerous times. Okay, to remove these, because they normally will have a lock nut on that end, I'll just get my wobbly here and hold the other end and just take these guys apart. There's nothing to it. Be a little careful. Sometimes these guys can be a little hard to get to. You can see there's a boss right here in the casting. That's why I have the wobbly. This guy's too deep. Don't have a deep socket, so I need to get him by hand. Boy, tight. I do have a deep socket, I just don't have one within reach. This guy ought to be okay. Man, am I lazy. Holy crap. All right. These guys should separate now. There we go, one. I'll clean him up a little bit. This guy, I'm not going to do anything to. He's in pretty good shape. And this guy, I can now orbital sand, and we'll get him all cleaned up. All right, so here's the process. 80 grit, orbital sander, lubricant. I highly recommend that you use lubricant, WD-40, whatever. You gotta clean it, it makes a mess, you gotta clean it off with a rag all the time, but it really does give you a good finish, so I'll show you what I mean. Okay, you see how that's really dark, and you can see how it rubs off, so I just rub it off, and look, it's already taken off a lot of it. Reapply. Okay, it looks like I gotta get right in here pretty good. Right down here maybe too, so here we go. Pretty dark again, but look, it's almost got her all off. I got a little bit right here. I'll hit that pretty hard this time. You do go through a lot of lubricant too, so. There we go. That's about, you can see it took that all the way down. I did want to show you this one until we go to a finer grit, but you can see the difference just between this two, and this is just 80 grit. Also, normally in these slots here, I use like a sponge guy and push them down into the slot and basically do the same thing. I can't get, obviously you can't get the orbital action because you just got to go back and forth, but you can see it cleans her out pretty good down there too. So that's a little more handwork. So now just the rest of this, again, I don't want to bore you with it. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go over it. There's 80 grit. Then I'm going to swap it out for about 180 grit. Then I'm going to swap it out for about 220 grit, and that's where I'm going to end. That's all I do to the top. And it works very well. Just remember, use a lot of lube, dude. Okay, here I am on the side with that epoxy paint or whatever it is. I'm just hitting it with a little brake clean. And I am being careful. It will take off the regular paint, right? So I'm just trying to hit where I see that gray epoxy paint is. And I'm being very careful. Now, strangely enough, this will soften, but it generally, you got to be a little careful on this latex stuff here. Latex doesn't want to come off with brake clean. It'll come off with like Goo Gone or something like that. But you can see I got this pretty good, and I think that I will be able to come by with some like goof off and just get these little dots off here. And I might want to hit that really light with a paint. We'll see. I did not cut all the way through. Got a little bit more there. I didn't cut all the way through that paint, but you can see I scuffed it up. So maybe just a little paste wax on that after I get off these little white dots. You can see it does take off. This is a red Scotch-Brite pad. You can see it does take off that paint too, so be very careful if you're doing this. All right, with the top done, let's turn our attention to the casing, the body. First thing I'm going to do is take some compressed air and blow this thing out. There's 50-year-old sawdust, a couple of dirt daubers. There we go. Not that big of a deal. Second thing, Dawn dish soap and water. Okay, it doesn't need to be anything special, whatever you happen to have. Purple Power, Simple Green, Dawn dish soap and water. Okay, we'll spray this guy down. And just a rag. It's no big deal. This is this body is in very, very good shape for, let's see, if this thing's mid-50s, that's 50 and 70 years old. It is heavy gauge steel. And this isn't even their, you know, this is their home craft model. This is made for homemakers. It's not their big industrial saws. So they made them good in the 50s, my friends. And it's in excellent shape. This one has not seen a whole lot of use. Not even gonna paint it. There are some spots that you can maybe see little chips there or whatever. But for what it is, I'm not gonna spend the $7 on a can of spray paint to paint it. Like I said, I got this saw for free, so. All right. That's literally all there is to clean this up. If there's any stubborn spots, I'll use a scrubby pad, but there wasn't. Jesus, fantastic shape. Okay, so that is the body. I did clean up the aluminum table extension on the wire wheel. You've seen me do that kind of stuff a billion times before. The regular extension, the steel one, I'm not going to do other than clean it up the same as this guy. So yeah, I could repaint it. It's just, you know, it's not that kind of saw to me. Okay. What I'll do is I'll end up donating this to somebody that doesn't have a saw, and it's a reasonable saw. You know, it's not a cabinet saw, but it's reasonable. All right. So that's all cleaned up also. All right. Now, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to reassemble the trunnion and the working assembly onto the table, and then put the table onto the body. Here's that table. We cleaned her up real nice with the random orbit. Get some wax on there. All right, here's that trunnion assembly. We can line this up. We're going to need to take this off in order to get the body on, but we'll worry about that when the time comes. These are those bolts. There's just 4 bolts that hold these guys in. Here. And these are those bolts with the little ribs on them so they don't back out on you. Okay. One, 2, 3, 4. Let's straighten this guy out here. Just to help it turn smooth now. Holy cow. All right. Get the old impact, and what do you think? 1/2 inch? Yep. I do have the impact on low, and I'm being very careful. Done. Okay, let's take this knob off here. We'll need that off to put on the body. Okay. Body's going on. And we're going to be real careful about this pointer here too when we do this. We're going to slip that through. There we go. And line everything up here. Okay. All right, again, 4 bolts. These have the little star washer on them that locks these guys down. Again, you want to start them all. And I would suggest that when you start them, you put them in, finger tight. Takes you 2 extra minutes with your finger, but you don't want to get these guys cross-threaded. Don't just put them on a half a thread. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Going on. Going on. These guys are 1/2 inch. Okay, we'll get the extension and the wobbly on here. You gotta kind of come in at them sideways. And there's some screws here that kind of get in your way too. That screw the badging and stuff on. And you'll notice I did these across, 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of like head bolts on a car. All right, give you a look underneath here. There she is. She's all put together underneath. Getting heavy with the top on there. And you'll notice that pointer is about right. I'll adjust that in a little bit here. And I will put this handle on. When you put the knob on, okay, it's got, just a standard kind of hex set screw here. But if you can see here, it's got a cross slot in here. And that cross slot, you probably won't be able to see this, corresponds to a cross slot that is cast into this. That way, that cross slot is turning it, not the tension on this set screw. The set screw is just holding it on. It's not doing the side torque. So you got to turn this thing till you feel it. There we go, set in. Then you tighten this baby down. Okay. There we go. Doesn't want it. Okay, push this guy all the way on. And then I'll tighten it down. Okay, that guy I get on pretty tight. So now I want to check him. Yep, he goes up and down, and then I'll pull him out, and he goes side to side. And I'm just gonna bend this with my hand just a little bit to get her to point right to 0. Boy, that's perfect. It's very smooth. It's got a little tension on it like it should, so it doesn't, move with the vibration of the saw. Also, I finished up the insert here. So, a couple other things here that are of note. I'm going to put this blade on, and as you recall, when we took this apart, it didn't have a vibration dampener, or whatever you want to call it, on the inside. That's bad. So I'm putting this guy on. Okay. And these are 1/2 inch. Another thing to be aware of, these are 1/2 inch. Okay, they're not 5/8. 5/8 is a standard nowadays, but for this saw, they're 1/2 inch. All right, and then I'll put the blade on. Then I'll put this one that I had, in my bag of parts on. Okay, and then I will put this fine threaded nut on. Okay. Now, as I look at this, this blade is just about centered in the slot. It was too far this way. You can even see he nicked it at some point in time because he didn't have that inner vibration dampener, or Washner, or whatever you want to call it on the inside. There was nothing there. So it's very important you get that and to check that before you fire up the saw. All right, now I am just going to tighten this up with just a crescent wrench here. I can block this blade here, piece of soft wood, tighten this up. There we go. All right, pretty much the saw is reassembled, but you don't have the extensions on. Yeah, I'm going to do that last, okay? So the saw is assembled. Now, also, as you recall, this saw, there we go, did not come with a motor or a stand. Again, because I do this a lot, I do have a motor and a stand for it, and I'll show you that here. All right, well, here's a stand I had from an earlier project. You can see it's already been refinished, and I believe this is probably about correct for that saw. Probably 50s, maybe 60s with the splayed feet on there for this saw. So this guy's kind of ready to go. I'll just kind of show you how this fits here. This guy will fit right on here. Holds it at about the proper height. I'm a taller guy, but so it's a little low, but it'll work. So that is what I'm going to use for the the stand. Now I also have might have even been from the same project, a 1 horsepower Craftsman motor. This is probably from the 70s, so it's not period correct. The period correct one would be probably a 3/4 horsepower, one of those cast iron motors. You can look back in my videos that I've done before about rebuilding the motors and the differences. But this one will work just fine, okay? It is again, a full horsepower, so it'll be plenty of power, and ball bearing motor, 3450. So that's also important. You want the blade to turn about 3450. That's about what they're meant for. So what I have to do now is, because it's belt drive, I have to get out of my stock, out of my extra parts bin, a pulley that is about the same size as the pulley on the arbor inside here. Because if the pulleys are the same size, the rotational speed will be the same. I happen to have one of those pulleys right here. 5/8 inch shaft. I'll also have a key for it. What I do want to do is I want to hit this on the wire wheel before I put it on here. But those are important. If you have a smaller pulley on the motor than on the arbor, it will spin slower. That probably doesn't cause a danger, but your feed rate and stuff, you'll have to adjust that. Additionally, if you have a larger pulley, that can get dangerous. Now you're spinning it faster than it was designed to, and I would be very careful about that. Okay, now the arbor pulley is on this side here. Okay. It comes off this side of the motor. This side here has the pulley on it. So this motor, right, is going to be mounted this way. In other words, the shaft is going to come out that way. Okay, because then it will center the motor back behind here a little bit better. Okay, I brought you around so you could get a little better view of it. The pulley on the arbor is on this side. So we want this motor to go like this. We don't want this motor to go like this. We want this motor to be mounted here. And we know that this guy has got to spin forward, right? Otherwise, again, very dangerous. All right, so this guy's going to spin this way, and if we look at that, that way is clockwise. We want this motor to spin clockwise. It's very important, okay? I'm going to say most motors from the factory will spin counterclockwise. Most may be an exaggeration. Let me put it this way. Some motors will spin clockwise. Some will spin counterclockwise. It has been my experience that most motors on power tools, and when I say most, I mean 60, maybe 70%, spin counterclockwise. These 70s and 80s Craftsman motors are very good. They have two different sizes. They got 5/8, they got 1/2 inch. You can wire them for 220 or 110. And very simply, on the instruction data patch here, data sheet, you can reverse the rotation by simply switching 2 wires. So the first thing we're going to do is see which way this thing's spinning right now. Okay, so here we go. I have this motor wired up to a power strip that is fused on the power strip. It also has a switch on it so I can turn it on and off. It's probably the safest way to do it. You know, it would, if something were wrong with this motor, it would blow the breaker in the box, but I have an additional level of safety because I'm using a power strip that has I think a 15 amp breaker in it also. So let's see, I'm gonna hit the switch on the power strip. Let's see which way this thing spins. All right, I don't know if you can see that, but it spins counterclockwise. We do not want it to spin counterclockwise. We want it to spin clockwise, okay? I'm unplugging it. Well, wait a minute, it's got a switch on it. I'm unplugging it because I'm safe. And if you can see on this motor here, I'll try to bring you in. Okay, there's the data plate. And it reads, to reverse rotation, interchange black and red leads on tabs A and B. So in here, there is going to be a black and a red wire. Okay, let's see what we got here. And I'll try to bring you in closer for this too. Okay, so here it's unplugged and we have a red lead and a black lead. And if you look on that plate again, it tells you this is A and B. So what we're gonna do, and another nice thing about these Craftsman motors is they have the spade terminal on them. You can just pull these off with a needle nose pliers. There's the red one. Let's see, where are you rascal? There's the black one. We're gonna put the black one where the red one was. We're gonna make sure we slide that all the way on so there's no problems in the future. Boy, nice tight fit on that one. And we're gonna put the red one where the black one was. In other words, we're just switching the leads here. Get that wire out of the way. Can't quite see in there. I'm gonna get that baby all the way on there. No, sideways on there a little bit. Wow. There we go, all the way on. Okay, both of them all the way on, and they're nice tight fits. So that guy ain't going anywhere. All right, now we'll just put this plate back on. Get the wire in the right spot. Put the plate back on. Okay, just to show you my setup, the wire runs out to my strip that's fused with a switch, and then it runs into the wall. I'll try to make it. All right, let's check the motor. If everything goes right, it should be spinning clockwise now. Clockwise it is. Now we're good. All right, I got the newly wire wheeled pulley, and I have a keyway here. All right, there we go. This motor is ready for installation. All right, let me show you what we got going on here. So here's that motor. Here is, and we know this motor's spinning the right way. Here is a V-belt that I had lying around. And this is kind of a mock-up of how this is gonna go. Just like this, okay? And so on these older saws, the motor stays fixed. Even when you change the angle, the motor stays fixed. So I'm a little concerned about that. The other thing that you need to be concerned about is as the blade goes up and down, it changes the tension on this, changes the distance between the pulleys, and so that changes the tension on this belt here. So how does one keep tension on the belt? Well, on the original ones, there was a funny, the motor would be mounted like this, okay? And there was a funny spring-loaded thing right here. I'm not gonna do that. What I'm gonna do is, since I don't have that, what I'm gonna do is mount this motor on a hinge, basically, okay? And I'll use the motor itself as the tensioner, the weight of the motor, right? It'll be on a hinge like this. And so as the blade goes up and down, the motor will go back and on, and it will keep constant tension on the belt. So I'm gonna cut a piece of wood, I'm gonna fabricate a piece of wood, I'm gonna put that piece of wood on a hinge into this piece underneath here that I cut, and that should work, hopefully. Okay, so I put this off about as long as I can too. I have two accessories. You have the miter and I have the fence. Both of these, again, are in pretty good shape. I'm gonna wire wheel the miter just because some surface corrosion, that kind of stuff. And I'll probably wire wheel the fence a little bit too. And then I'll just come back and literally clean them off again with dish detergent and water. So I'll lube this up in here, and I'll show you that too. So let me get after these first real quick here. All right, all finished out, nothing to do but check her out. Turns out when I said I wasn't gonna paint anything, I'm a liar. I did paint the miter gauge and the fence. So, you know, but that's it. They were just a little too tough for me to let stand. Let's check her out here, see if she works. Very smooth, very quiet, pretty good cut. That depends on the blade more than anything else. That is a carbon steel chrome edge Sears blade. Anyhow, nice little project, nice little saw. Again, everybody here knows it's not cabinet grade, okay? But it can get you through projects. Every dad in suburbia in the 50s and 60s had one of these, or maybe the 100, the big 10-inch saw, the bigger 10-inch saw. But nice saw, nice little restoration, works great. Kind of take you in to see some stuff here. All right, there's the painted miter gauge and there's the painted fence. Those all work great. Everything works good on these. I did actually not only wire wheel, but I sent that on a polisher for 5 minutes and it operates very smoothly. Same with all of this stuff down here. This you know, diamond pattern stuff is in excellent shape. There's no dents. It works good. This all works very smooth. That's the in, right? So that's when you push it in, it's the blade height. And when you pull it out, it's, you can see it go here, the angle. So all of that works really good, really smooth. Fence slides. Again, it's kind of hodgepodge. I understand that with the different tables and stuff, and even the stand and the 1 horsepower motor I have on there. But so it's not really a restoration. It's a resto mod, I guess I'd call it. Table turned out good, no major pitting. So, pretty good. That's all, folks. Nice little project. Turned out about as expected. A functional saw. Again, not cabinet grade or anything like that, but everything works. It runs smooth. Big 1 horsepower ball bearing motor on there. You know, you could maybe, first thing I'd do if I was going to own this saw and keep it is upgrade the fence a little bit. But even that, you know, take your time when setting it up. It'll make a clean cut. Anyhow, hope you enjoyed this. If you did and you like this kind of content, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, share it with your friends, share it with your neighbors, share it with your friends' neighbors, share it with your neighbors' friends, whatever. And we'll get on to the next one. Thanks again for joining me.